Hey guys, welcome back to Heart Breathings. Today I am once again going to get super vulnerable with you. I guess that 2020 is just my year to be vulnerable and tell you all the things, but I am going to actually share with you a moment in my life that completely transformed my writing life and how I see the business of indie writing, which is my Dragonfly story. I've talked or sort of hinted at this a few times in the past, but now I'm going to actually tell you guys the story, and I'm going to try my best to keep it somewhat fast because I tried to already record this and she was kind of being fussy in the background. So if you're new here, I'm Sarra Cannon, the author of more than 25 young adult novels, and this is my sweet little Evie, who is 5 months old and being a little bit fuzzy. So we're gonna just sit her right here on my lap and I'm gonna tell you guys my Dragonfly story. Okay, so I have shared with you guys before a lot about my self-publishing journey that I started in 2010, but what we're going to do now is sort of fast forward to 2014, 2015. So earlier on in my career, I was just purely publishing based on joy. I was so excited to have the opportunity to write the kinds of books that I loved. And my number one goal with publishing, of course, we all want to make money and we all want to have some level of readership and things like that. But one of my biggest core values back then was having fun writing the types of stories that really ignited my imagination and, were things that I just felt like I needed to tell because they were exciting for me or they had a certain meaning for me. And I wanted to get my books into the hands of readers that it would transform them in some way or make them see, the world in a new way. And those were my really two number one things: having fun and, changing lives, so to speak, through fiction that encouraged people to be their best selves or to let them know that they could make it through difficult things. So I started out with that and everything was great. I was actually gathering, more fans and having more success and having a lot of fun. But there was a turning point for me actually in 2013 where new adult became kind of a new genre that indies had created overnight practically with authors like Colleen Hoover towards the end of 2012. And so in 2013, I had a little bit of a break in my series and thought, you know what, I'm going to write something that's new adult contemporary, not just because it was super popular, but because it was a new genre and there was space for new voices and I had a story to tell. So if you guys have watched my Decade in Review, you know what happened to me when I was over in Europe, and I wanted to tell a similar type of story about a girl who experiences that same kind of trauma at college, and that feeling, I wanted to explore that feeling of coming home to a place where you always were, growing up and being kind of feeling separated because you've been through something that changed you so deeply and not feeling like you connect with your old friends. And I really wanted to tell that story, and I did, and I told it with the best of my ability and poured my heart into it. But something happened shortly after that where so many people told me, oh, I think this book could hit the list, I think it's really important, it's a valuable book, whatever. And I listened to that so much amongst my writer group friends, and there were a lot of people hitting lists and breaking out because of that genre that I believed it, and I kind of was like, oh, that would be really cool. And it sort of shifted what I thought I wanted out of this business and turned me to, instead of spending as much time focused and thinking about the joy of writing and the community that I was building, I started focusing at that point a lot more on the sales numbers and how much money was I making and what did other people think of me. And that seemed like a subtle shift, but I started focusing so much more on the business of it that over the next couple of years, I really got myself into a toxic place where I joined Facebook groups where people were talking only about marketing. There was no more about the craft of writing or the joy of writing. I focused less on my community of fans and more on my community of authors who could teach me the tricks and the ways to follow the trends and do the things. And all of that stuff is important in this business, like understanding how the business works and how to properly format your books and how to get cover art that people are going to really respond to. All that stuff is important. But for me, when I started to focus more on those things, the sales rankings and the money, when I focused more on the numbers than I did on my joy of writing and what I was, pouring into it and how I was communicating with my fans, I started to lose a piece of what made writing so magical for me. And I didn't understand that was what was happening at the time, but I had fallen into this trap that I think a lot of us fall into, which is this feeling or this saying in our minds that well, I'll be happy when, or it'll all be worth it when. And we set up this kind of goal of like, when I make more money, or when I can buy a new car, or when I have 10,000 fans, it'll all be worth it. And sometimes in pursuit of that thing that we're reaching for, we sacrifice things that are actually really, really important to the core of who we are. And this is what I was doing. I was saying, I'll be happier when we can afford a bigger house. I'll be happier when I can hit the top 100 on Amazon, or when I can get a top 100 book of the year. I need to keep working. And I started sacrificing a lot of my time with my family and my husband. I started sacrificing so much of my own like mental health and well-being that I was like snapping at people. I was being stressed all the time. I was pushing myself literally to the physical and mental limit, because I was seeking these things of like, when I get, this, when I hit this list, when I do this, when I do this. And I was so focused on impressing other people and, hitting this imaginary goal of, being, a top author or whatever it is, that I completely lost my joy of writing. And when it really came to a head for me, and I know this is going to sound a lot like really ridiculous to people, but I hope that you do hear me, especially if you're somebody who right now has this thought that if you get to a certain level of success, it'll make you happy. Because what happened for me around, October and November of 2014 was I made more money than I could have imagined in those 2 months. And in fact, in the month of November, I made more in 1 month than I had an entire year of being an elementary school teacher. And it affected me so much because I was waiting for the joy. Like, I saw the numbers coming in and I was like, okay, now I'm ready for the lasting joy to come from this. And instead of lasting joy, I fell into a very deep depression. I couldn't get out of bed. I was binge eating. I was not taking care of myself. I would sometimes when I would get up to help my son get off to school, I would just sit down on the couch in my PJs all day long, not showered, binge eating really, really terrible foods, and just watching Investigation Discovery all day long. I had no motivation. I cried a lot. I felt like I had truly lost a piece of myself, and it made absolutely no sense to me because I was more successful than I had ever been. So why was it pushing me into this deep depression? Well, I spent a few months, almost half a year in that depression before I finally started to wake up and think, at first I believed I was hitting this rock bottom because I was just a fundamentally flawed person. There's just something wrong with me. And I put myself into a lot of guilt and shame. Like, look at you, you have everything you've ever wanted. So many people would kill to be making this much money in a month. You're the worst person ever. And I spent a lot of time hating on myself, which only perpetuated the depression. But about 6 months or so after that, I started working with a tarot life coach named Tanya Gonzalez. So she is basically a psychic life coach that used tarot cards and things like that to help, with life coachy kind of things and help me get out of this depression. And there were other things, personal things that I won't talk about that were going on at the time that we were working through as well. But I started to finally pick myself out of this depression. And what I started to kind of understand was that I had become part of that I had started to engage in a lot of toxic activity, and I had really lost my love of writing. And that I wanted to get back to writing. But I was still stuck in this mentality of instead of focusing on what I loved about writing, I was still looking around going, what's selling right now? What do I need to write? And I was feeling very desperate and panicked because it had been a while since I had written a book, and I was just starting to experience that panic. So this is where the Dragonfly Story comes in. So a couple of things had happened. I had just rebranded my entire Shadow Demon saga and put out new covers. So this is early 2016. And I had just gotten in the mail that morning a phone case that had my new cover on it for Beautiful Demons. And Beautiful Demons, if you don't know, is the very first book I ever wrote that I published. I had written books before, but it was the first book I published, and it started my indie career. And that was just pure fun for me. There was no expectation. It was just pure joy. So I had just put that new book cover on my phone as a phone case. So here's an example. I get these from decalgirl.com. I'll link it down below, but this is the new cover that's coming out soon for Death's Awakening. I just love to have them on my phone and my laptop. So I had just gotten that phone case in, And I was trying to think about how am I going to get back to writing? And I was kind of in a panic. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to go outside, sit on my nice porch. It was a nice, beautiful day. And I am going to read a book. I don't know what I'm going to read, but I'm going to read something and hope that it inspires me. Now, earlier that week in one of our sessions, Tanya had told me, I have this sense that you're going to receive some kind of guidance or message from the spirit world in the form of an animal, like an animal totem or spirit totem of some kind. And I was like, okay, I'm open to that. I am willing, you know, I believe that something like that can happen. So I'm just going to be open to it, whatever. But I wasn't really thinking about it on this particular morning. So what I did was, I wasn't sure what to read. So I went on to Amazon and I went to my own books page. So I went to the Beautiful Demons page and I started looking at my also boughts, which is that row of books underneath the main book that says like customers who bought this book also bought. And I thought I'm going to read something that obviously my fans also like to read. So I scrolled through and found a book by, I think Madeline Freeman is her name, and it's a witch's book. I'll find it for you and link it down below. But it's also another young adult book with a young witch who, you know, comes to a new school and she's orphaned. And I thought, this is similar to my book. Let me check it out. And as I was sitting there reading it on my phone, I was sitting there starting to get chills because I was thinking, this is the kind of book that inspired me to write in the first place. I love this. This is the kind of characters I love. There were some similarities to my books, like some of the same tropes. And I was remembering how much fun it was to just write for the fun of it, which I hadn't done in so long. And as I was thinking that, this little dragonfly came and sat on the very tip of my phone case right here in the corner. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting because, you know, dragonflies don't usually just come and sit, same as butterflies don't usually just come and sit on your phone, you know, they might fly on a bush nearby. But this dragonfly sat on the edge of my phone and it stayed there. Even though I was still scrolling, it stayed there, hovered, like perched on the edge of my phone case, which remember was the design I had just done for this book I used to love as I'm reading a book that reminds me of that book. It's so mind-blowing. That dragonfly stayed there for about 5 minutes. I'm getting chills just now thinking about it. Stayed there for about 5 minutes. And as I'm sitting there reading this book, I started to understand that this was my spirit totem. This was my animal spirit telling me to get back to what I loved most about writing in the first place, to stop worrying about, is this book going to take off? Is it going to sell? Will the fans like it? Will I get more fans? Am I going to hit a list? And all these things I had worried about, because really what matters to me most is the joy of writing and connecting with the kind of people that love to read the books I write. And so about 5 minutes later, the dragonfly flew off. I'm in tears. So instead of continuing to read that book that I was enjoying and was a very good book and a good series, I looked up spirit totems online and I went to a site, I don't have it pulled up now, but it's like spiritanimals.com or spirittotems.com, and looked up what does dragonfly mean. And it says what a dragonfly means when you see it, like as a spirit totem, is transformation, but also getting back to your joy. And I am telling you, that moment like that transformed my entire life. Also, at the same time, believe it or not, I got a text from Tanya all the way in Mexico where she lives. She texted me and she said, I just got a sense that you've just received your spirit totem message. What was it? And I was like, oh my gosh, you won't believe this. But this dragonfly just sat on my phone case for 5 minutes. And she was like, this is a message for you that you have to stop worrying about your sales numbers and what other people think of you and whether you have a nice house or a nice car or all these other things that you think are going to make you happy, because those things are never going to make you happy. And you have to get back to the joy of writing what you love and putting your heart and soul into those books. But I wanted to share this moment with you guys because it was so transformational to me, because I had thought, you know, in the beginning that it was all about the joy and the community. But as I got even more successful, you think the more successful you get, the less stressed you're going to be. Like, oh, book releases will be a breeze and I already have these fans, so it makes it so much easier. And everybody who's successful has it so much easier. But the truth is, it just gets different. And actually, releases get more stressful the more successful you are. The more you begin to depend on the money that's coming in, the more stressful it is to think about whether or not you're going to be able to keep it up. So there are still more stresses that come. It doesn't solve all your problems just because you start making money. So trust me on that. It's nice. I'm super, super grateful for it. But the problem was that I was starting to sacrifice my own joy, and I was starting to veer off into a place where I was not being true to myself and who I was, so that I could chase after what other people had or what I thought other people expected of me. And it was destroying me, and I was a broken person. And it wasn't until I had this moment with this dragonfly where I remembered what it was like to love writing, to really and truly let it feed my soul, and to get it out there in that way. Now, it's a weird thing, and it's a crazy thing to talk about when we talk about the business of writing, especially as indies, because you do have full control. And you will hear a lot of people who will tell you, this isn't an art, you can't indulge in what you really want, this isn't about the love of writing, this is about a business. And if you want to be successful, you have to do X, Y, Z. And I say that that is such toxic advice. You need to understand the business. You need to know how it works. You need to understand why books sell and why readers pick books up. Tell them maybe. You need to understand the business of writing. But that does not mean that you can't be joyful, that you can't be an artist, that you can't play with your stories. I know that some people look at it as being mutually exclusive. They say you're either going to be all business or you're going to be all art and you'll never make a dime. But I'm here to tell you that I am living proof that you can follow your heart, write what you love, and find a way to make money doing it. You can figure out how to package it. There are certain things like fundamentals of how to package your books, of how to get cover art, of how to figure out your keywords and figure out how these vendors work so that you can get your books in the hands of readers. Yes, the trendier you write, the faster you write, the more you're writing to a specific like genre, the probably faster you're going to find success. However, it's not worth it, in my humble opinion, to write something that you don't love or to push yourself to the point of exhaustion and burnout and depression in chasing money or success. It's not worth it, because when you get there, trust me from experience, it is not going to make you happy just because you reach this milestone level. It is not going to transform your life. What will transform your life is figuring out what success looks like to you, what is the most important to you, and then going after that in a way that makes you feel good and that is true to yourself. Controversial subjects this week. I know there are a lot of people who believe differently and they've had different experiences and they're feeling jaded and bitter because they haven't had the success they want to have. And I completely understand that and sympathize with that. But I truly, truly believe that if you have a story to tell and if you have been called to be a writer and tell these stories, that one of the best things that you can do for yourself is to tell those stories. And don't change what you're writing for anybody else. Don't write sexier or write romance or write mystery just because someone says it sells better if that is not what you want to do. Don't write a supernatural prison book right now just because everybody else is telling you that's what sells. If you want to write it because you love it. Write it because it makes you happy and it's exciting for you. But the more you follow that joy and your soul and your heart, the happier you're going to be, no matter what level of success you have. So that is the biggest message that I have for you today. If that resonates with you in any way, I hope that you'll subscribe to this channel and keep following. Which soon after that Dragonfly experience, I actually went to Vegas and got a tattoo. I didn't get a dragonfly, but I will get one soon. But this is a feather quill that has some crows on it. And it also has the saying up here on my wrist that says, "Fill your paper with the breathings of your heart," which is one of my favorite quotes. And you know, it's not about, for me, writing is not about filling your paper with what's going to sell the best or filling your paper with what everybody else says will sell or is the trendiest. It's really, writing for me is about filling my paper with the breathings of my heart, the things that speak to me, the things that are the most exciting and the most fun for me, or the things that have impacted my life in a way that touched my soul. And that is writing for me. And that is why I was inspired to start this channel in the first place, which is called Heart Breathings, which comes from this quote. Because I hear all the time people telling you, you should, go after the money. Here's how much I'm making. And all of those things can sometimes convince us that it's too scary to follow our heart, that we're not going to be a success, and that what we need to do is what everybody else is doing and what everybody else tells us to do. And we can get caught up so much in the numbers and in comparing ourselves to other people that we completely forget why we're doing this in the first place. So this is my message to you, to give you permission, even though I can't send you a dragonfly. I want to give you permission to write what you love. Find a way to market it, find a way to package it, write the most marketable thing you love, which we can talk about writing to market in a future episode if you would like, but write what fills your heart, what speaks to you, because in the end, that's what matters most. If you are an artist more than you're a business person, then follow your heart, and it's okay to do that. Even if other people tell you that you shouldn't and that you should write to trends or sacrifice what you love writing, listen to your own heart, and it is never going to lead you down the wrong path. All right, guys, that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, I really hope that you will subscribe and hit that notification bell. A lot of more of my vulnerable type of posts have been coming out. Soon, though, we're going to start talking about, like this Thursday, we're going to start talking about some writing craft videos, like how to use pacing to write a better novel, how to write a series. So if you're interested in some of those types of topics, as well as planning and, just general how to thrive as a self-published author, I hope that you'll subscribe. Also, just to let you know, my Publish and Thrive course starts, as you're watching this, it'll be starting tomorrow. So registration closes tomorrow morning. If you'd still like to join us and learn how to make money writing what you love, I hope you'll check out that link down below. All right, guys, have a great weekend. Evie says hello. And we will see you guys soon. Bye.